A couple of years ago, as I was getting ready to get married, I got a piece of advice from a dear friend, and it was about how to approach difficult and sensitive subjects in our marriage. But I tell you, this mindset, it became this central foundational aspect to how I really try to learn anything about anything these days. Hi, I'm Josh Sammons, your host for Night Owl Christian, the channel where we try to take life and love and science and religion and politics and really everything and try to just figure it out one day at a time. So this good friend of mine, he was counseling my fiance and I, and he gave us this piece of advice that he and his wife worked through when they were early on in their relationship. So they developed this mindset, and they called it a grace talk. The idea of a grace talk is when you sit down with somebody else whom you have a relationship with, you sit down with this person and you realize that you and this other person have some differences, that you have an issue that needs to be worked through. And you approach this discussion, this debate, this fight, this intense topic that you might have, and you both come to it with this agreed upon sort of truce. And that's sort of the turn of phrase, hey, can we have a grace talk about that? Where you're calling out, look, whatever emotions have been running high, or maybe we didn't know that we just stumbled into a serious conversation, somebody is recognizing that they would like to share their position on this thing. And it's a little bit of a timeout. When you enter into a grace talk, you're saying, look, I'm about to share a position with you that I have on a topic, but that position may not be fully formed. And part of my way of processing this position or my position or this topic is to share kind of where I am with it, but realizing that it's not some watertight, sealed, complete, ready for a PhD dissertation kind of position. And you both enter into this talk with the idea that you both may have an idea that's not fully formed or a position that's fully vetted out. And that's okay, because when you're in this grace talk, you also kind of agree that you're not going to hold what I'm about to say against me, and I'm not going to hold what you're about to say against you. We agree to kind of put the guns away, rhetorical guns away, and we're not just going to start firing at you as you're trying to get this out. You just commit yourselves to get it all out there so that you can understand maybe your own argument or your own logic or your own position more clearly in saying it, and you can understand the other person's context for where they came from and why they feel a certain way. It's the simplest thing, almost kindergarten in its simplicity, right? It's this no-duh sort of thing, but it's something that we've lost so much, it seems, in this digital age. There's a real need for a way to just sit down and hear the other person. And so that's what these grace talks try to do. So you may be thinking, it's like, well, Josh, it just sounds like a civil discussion. And it is, spoiler alert. A grace talk is pretty much just a civil discussion. But there are some ground rules that you set up when you enter into this grace talk mode. First ground rule of a grace talk is there needs to be a relationship that exists, a relationship that you value and that the other person values at some level, and you both have to kind of mutually decide that, you know what, let's work out, or at least understand, if we can't work it out, understand more of how we are both approaching this topic of intense debate. The next rule of a grace talk, or of having a grace talk, kind of piggybacks off of the first. It's all about wisdom and respect. You are not trying to win, you are trying to understand. And there's a biblical basis for this, for the Christians in the audience, of being slow to speak, of being slow to anger. There's all sorts of wisdom sayings in Proverbs about pursuing understanding and seeking understanding, and how a fool doesn't seek understanding but wants to just air his or her own opinions, right? That kind of stuff. If you're entering into this sort of mindset, Not only do you need the relationship, but ultimately, this discussion needs to be about pursuing wisdom or understanding and having respect for the other person. Next point, a grace talk is not about converting anybody. That's not the purpose of a grace talk. You may think that you're going to win them over so long as they hear how you really feel. You may hope that they are won over by your unassailable logic and all that kind of stuff. But you cannot enter a grace talk with the agenda to change somebody's mind. Put that will and that desire aside when you're in this moment. You are in this moment to learn about your own position through the expression of that position, and they feel like they can share their position in the same way. It's this sort of mutual submission to one another, and it's almost a sort of mutual vulnerability. Another ground rule for grace talks is anger really needs to be put aside. Now, if the other person starts attacking you and they're not really respecting the overall vibe of a grace talk, well, that's one thing. At that point, you're not having a grace talk, you're just having an argument. But if you've entered into this sort of understanding and this sort of timeout zone moment mindset, you need to hold your tongue and listen. And even if what the other person is saying is deeply bothersome to you or offensive, you wait your turn and then you say it in a measured way, in a reserved way. Because the other person may not realize how deeply you feel about the topic that you're trying to express or the position you're trying to express. It's a moment of mutual discovery. The final ground rule that I have in my mind is you both have veto power to just not start one. If you're not ready to have a grace talk and somebody else brings it up about a certain topic, it's okay to say, I'm just not really ready for a grace talk. You both need to be in a position where you can put the anger aside. You both need to be in the position where you can hear each other, and forcing it isn't going to help anything. These ground rules and stuff are kind of works in progress themselves. So as people share their own experiences, which I would love to hear your experiences with maybe having topics or approaches like this in the comments below. Grace talks need a grace talk sometimes because it's an imperfect process by imperfect people that are trying to figure out an imperfect situation. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that you can exercise grace talks in your life. I hope that maybe you could even use it to broach difficult subjects with family members or friends that maybe you were afraid to broach, and you can bring this up to kind of ease your way into those discussions. I'm all about people just learning more about each other, and even if we're remarkably different, I think we can still have a mutual respect. And that sounds a little Pollyanna, gee whiz, I realize, but I don't care. And I'm still pushing for that kind of stuff. So thanks for being here. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of our videos, and we look forward to talking to you next time.